Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and fellow citizens, I, Shweta Surana, welcome you all to the 11th Surana and Surana Knowledge Series, Elections 2024 Issues Unravelled, organized in association with the Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, the Indian Chamber of Commerce, Duchess Club, and the Tamil Chamber of Commerce. It is indeed an honor to stand before you today as we gather to engage in a vital conversation about the issues that shape our nation's future. In a world where our voices are more important than ever, events like this serve as a critical platform for dialogue, debate, and delivery. Elections are the lifeblood of our nation, a time when we exercise our right to vote, shape our policies, and collectively steer the course of our country. Our distinguished panelists today will provide their insights, share their expertise, and ignite conversations that are not only informative, but also empowering. So let us listen attentively, question fearlessly, and engage respectfully. Remember, only issues and no politics. Thank you for being here today, and let us make this event a catalyst for positive change in our society. With this, I now invite the moderator for today's panel discussion, Dr. Vinod Surana, Managing Partner and CEO, Surana and Surana International Attorneys. The law firm Surana and Surana International Attorneys, headquartered in Chennai with a full-fledged law firm in Delhi, is the go-to law firm by the industry on parameters such as integrity, cost-effective solutions, quick response, as well as research-oriented work. A second-generation lawyer, Dr. Surana is a distinguished legal scholar and holds a doctorate in law. Dr. Surana is also a certified independent director, a family business advisor, accredited mediator, social worker, and a policy advisor. Dr. Surana is also the legal advisor to the Taipei Economic and Cultural Center, the Consulate of the Republic of China, Taiwan. Over to you, Dr. Vinod.
Thank you, Shweta. Distinguished panelists, presidents and members of our various partner institutions, colleagues in the legal profession, representatives from the diplomatic missions in Chennai, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Surana and Surana International Attorneys, and on behalf of our partner institutions, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you to today's panel discussion on the topic of issues in elections 2024. We are indeed very fortunate and honored to have an extremely renowned panel of intellectuals known for their deep insights, unique perspectives, and balanced views. I would like to quickly and very briefly introduce each one of our esteemed panelists before we invite them on stage. We have Mr. N. Gopalaswamy, a Padma Bhushan awardee, was the 15th Chief Election Commissioner of India. Mr. Gopalaswamy is a 1966 batch IAS officer. He was the former chairman of the Kalakshetra Foundation and currently the president of the Vivekananda Education Society. We are honored by your presence, sir. Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy, the 13th Chief Election Commissioner of India and a IRS officer of the 1963 batch. He is an author of the book, The Miracles of Democracy, India's Amazing Journey. He is also an independent director in reputed companies. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence. Mr. Arun Ram, a senior journalist and the resident editor of the Times of India, overseeing all the 6 editions in Tamil Nadu. He specializes in the subjects of politics, policies, health, science and technology. Mr. Arun Ram is a British Chevening Young Print Journalist Scholar and a recipient of the Sarojini Naidu Prize for reporting on the Panchayati Raj. Thank you, sir. Mr. Alok Prasanna. He is the co-founder and team lead at the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy in Bangalore. He is known for his expertise on subjects such as judicial reforms, constitutional law, urban development, law and technology. He has extensive publications in leading journals and media outlets of India and legal practice experience before the Supreme Court and the Delhi High Court. Most welcome, Alokji. Mr. Rahul Raghu, the Professor of Political Science at the Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar Law University. He has over 15 years of teaching and research experience. He teaches political science and developmental studies, and he is also a researcher at the IIT Madras and Hyderabad University. He is a sought-after resource person by the government and various research institutions. Most welcome, Professor. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I now request Mr. P.S. Surana, founding partner, Surana and Surana International Attorneys, to present a memento as a token of our gratitude to our honorable panelist, Padma Bhushan awardee, Mr. N. Gopal Swami.
A very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you once again. I would like to make a few points before we start the panel discussions. Today's program is only about issues of election 2024. We are not going to be discussing about politics, politicians, or political parties. Some of us here want clarity. Some of us here want reassurance. Some of us here want reinforcement of our beliefs, while yet some of us want more information. I believe that we all desire to exercise our franchise by being better informed citizens. There are many questions on my question sheet here, and I am sure there are many more questions in the minds of our audience. We have about 90 minutes, and we will try to make the best use of the time available. We will have from the panelists their perspectives, the perspectives of a regulator, perspectives of a media, of a senior journalist, perspectives of a policy advocate, and the perspectives of an academician. I will try to do my best to rotate the strike, as they say, and change the pace to keep up the excitement. So with those few words, let us start the panel discussions. Yes. I would like to specially recognize the presence of Mr. T.K. Rangarajan, a very senior member of parliament, a former senior member of parliament. Thank you for your presence, sir. There are many issues. So, where do we start? Being a student of international relations, I thought we should start from outside India. I thought we will start from Pakistan. A few weeks ago, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, gave a statement to the media. Like India, if we had electronic voting machines in Pakistan, the results would have reflected the choice of the people, and the results could not have been tampered with. So I thought, let me start from there, and I'd like to have the views. I would like to request our honorable election commissioners, former election commissioners, to speak about the whole concept of electronic voting machines, how we got onto them, why is there a controversy. In fact, in the newspapers yesterday there was a report that there is a High Court case in the Madras High Court where they are opposing the third generation electronic voting machines. So, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. I'm indeed delighted to be present here. Although, when Mr. Surana invited me, I told him, I don't think you need two former chief election commissioners to address you. One too many. But he said the others are happy to have you. And I couldn't decline the invitation. But be that as it may, I think it's a nice gathering to have cool and collected thoughts, not related to politicians, political parties, and the heat and dust of elections. He started about the electronic voting machines and Mr. Imran Khan. I think I must also narrate an anecdote. I had gone to Pakistan just in 2005, I think, April, and there was a conference. He made a statement in the open conference. We have a chief election commissioner from India. At the time I was still in service, and he said, he'll be retiring soon. I wish we could get him here to advise the Pakistani Election Commission. I also met the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, I think it is Izad Hussain or some, I don't remember the name exactly. He told the Chief Election Commissioner of Pakistan in my presence, why don't you get some ideas about introducing electronic voting machines in Pakistan? So this was the friendly reaction when I visited Pakistan in 2005. But the point I want to make is, since he has raised the issue of electronic voting machine, do we have any doubts about the credibility of these institutions, these machines? In fact, it is a nation's pride. How much time I can take? About 5-10 minutes?
Yeah.
It is a nation's pride, discovered and designed by our engineers in Electronic Corporation of India and Bharat Electronics, Bangalore. In fact, many foreign countries have evinced interest, although they may not have bought it. But at least for considering the Indian conditions and Indian voting population, Indian geographical area, I think that was the best discovery that was made, and that was the best change that the Election Commission of India brought about it. It's very unfortunate that in every election this is raked as an issue, questioning the credibility of this institution. All that I would say is, it was cleared by a technical expert committee, and one of the persons who was heading that committee told me that he had given full freedom to about 40 electronic engineers to break open the machine and find out any loophole in that. And they came out later on with a report clearly saying that it is absolutely credible machine, and it need not be doubted at all. And thereafter, the Election Commission over a period of time introduced in small by-elections and then in state elections and so on. Ultimately, it got accepted. But we did in 2004 when we extended it to the entire parliament elections of nearly 800,000 polling booths. It was a big challenge. It was a big problem because getting the machines, organizing them, transporting them, training them, etc. But I think I must pay a handsome tribute not only to the engineers of these public sector institutions, but also the training personnel of the Election Commission of India, the various other supporting staff. They did a wonderful job reaching almost every village in India, exposing the use of the machine. And in the 2004 elections where I was there, we did not have any election petition challenging the integrity of the machines used. There were some questions raised, but it was much less than 0.1% of the machines used. And we had also taken measures to see that these machines were, immediately if there is any problem, they were attended to and so on. But with all that, it's again, we see a petition has been filed. Fortunately, the stand that was taken by the Madras High Court yesterday by the petitioners was that they are not insisting on this to be decided before the 2024 elections. All that they have said is that this should be considered for the next elections. I am glad at least that it was pragmatic. So all that I would stress again to the people of this country is, do not doubt the integrity of the machines. If you want suggest improvements, there is no problem, and they can be improved upon if necessary. But do not revert to the ballot paper system. That's the worst system that you can have. In a country like India, we had bitter experiences. I don't want to mention the states and some leaders who have indulged in bogus stuffing of ballot papers in some parts of India. So please, whatever change you want, please ask for it. But do not revert to the ballot paper system. It's the worst change that can take. And the advantages, as you know, as far as the machine is concerned, you save time, you save paper, you save invalid votes, you do not have invalid votes in the system, and so on. So these are many benefits available, and please, at least the public should have faith. It is some of the political parties, they may raise this issue, but, well, they are entitled to raise this issue, but all that I stress is, do not go back to the ballot paper system. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. I'm very happy that I'm being invited to be with you in this discussion. Let me fill a few points on the electronic voting machines. The introduction has been given by my worthy senior, Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy. I'll just add a few more points to this. Number one, the use of the electronic voting machine in a polling station, what it passes through, what various steps it passes through. Much before the elections are announced, all machines are tested. All machines are tested. At that time, there are no candidates. Therefore, the political parties are invited to send their representatives to look at the machines. The machines are tested. Whatever mechanical faults are there, they are removed, or electronic faults are removed. The rest of them are got ready. Test polling is done. In about 1 to 5% of machines, test polling is done and shown to the representative if he cares to remain present. That's the first step. And thereafter, the next step is to take machines to the district headquarters, which are the district election officer, the collector of the district is the district election officer. He oversees the election in the entire district. Therefore, machines are sent. How are they sent? It is not at the will and whim and fancy of a particular person. He says this machine here, that machine there. No. It is done by a computerized selection. Randomized computer selection makes the choice of the machine with a number, goes to a particular district. Then from the district, it goes to the headquarters of the constituency, or supposing it is a assembly election, it goes to the assembly, the Tahsildar or the subdivision magistrate or the deputy collector or assistant collector is the, sub-collector is the person. So it goes to his place. Again, this is by a randomized selection using a computerized software. Okay. Then by the time the candidates are coming onto the stage. So now the testing is done by inviting the candidates, and testing is done in their presence, whosoever remains present. About 100 votes are polled. There is a small history behind that 100. I'll just tell you, I mean, how Commission has been keeping up with all the allegations or whatever it is. You see, some rumor was spread at some point of time saying that whosoever gets the first 50 votes, all other votes thereafter will go to him. This is a rumor which started. So the Commission said, all right, now we will demonstrate showing 100 votes, not 10. So 100 votes are polled in 5% of machines and shown, okay, in presence of the candidate or his representative. This is the second time. Thereafter, the machines are sent to the polling station. How is it done? Again, through a computerized operation, randomly selected. The numbers are noted and given to the candidate, saying that this number will have to be found in so-and-so polling station. You will find it there. Tell your representative, before starting of the poll, he can ask for the number and note down whether it coincides with the number which has been given to him. Then the final testing takes place on the day of poll, just before the polling starts. We people go at 7 o'clock, but the staff will be there from 6 o'clock onwards, testing the machine, polling at least one vote for each candidate who is present there. I mean, in the sense, they press each one of those buttons and show that now the VVPAT is also there, that the VVPAT shows the correct selection, that the machine, the counting machine also shows the correct figure. It is only then that information is erased, machine is locked, and then the polling allowed to start. So 3 levels of testing is done in presence of the candidate's representative or the political party representative, polling enough number of votes. Now the VVPAT has come, which again strengthens the scene. Now the mandate of the Supreme Court is, at the end of the poll, after at the end of the initial counting, using the electronic information, electronic machine, you have to take 5 polling station information of the VVPAT, compare the result from the VVPAT paper trail and the machine, what the machine shows. Now this is done at the rate of 5 per constituency, assembly constituency, right? So let me give a small piece of statistics. In the 2019 election, we have 543 constituencies, an average of 6.5 to 7 assembly constituencies for each parliamentary constituency. Somewhere it is 10. Smaller states may have 10 even. So the total number of testings done, I mean, you multiply 543 by 6 by 5, around 19,000. 20,692 comparisons were made. Not in one single case there was a dissonance. There was no dissonance in even one place. Now at the end of all, this is 2019. Subsequently, up to 2024, there have been assembly elections. In each of these assembly elections, the same procedure is followed. And the same comparison is done. And the same comparison has shown that there is nothing wrong with the machine, nothing wrong with the VVPAT. So despite all this, if the political parties claim, it is because, they can't, if they get defeated, they can't blame you and me. You will go and hit them saying that I didn't vote for you because I had my own calculation, right? So you can't blame the Annadata, you see. You can't blame the voter. So whom else you blame? You blame the machine because it can't speak back. It can't speak back to you, okay? Saying that, you stupid fellow, you are wrong, I am not wrong. Okay, so please, I'll just add to what Mr. TSK said, nothing wrong with the machine at all. And therefore, you can go with full confidence that the machine will reflect whatever your choice is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, from Pakistan, let's go to China. Yesterday, I was reading a news report where Microsoft Corporation has issued a warning saying the Chinese are most likely to interfere in the election process in India, South Korea, and one more third country through social media, through misinformation. So my question to our senior journalist, Mr. Arun Ram, is how do we deal with deepfakes, misinformation? What is the position of media, which is regulated, which is accountable, versus social media, which is non-regulated, anonymous, unaccountable? Sir.
Thank you. I think we don't need China or Pakistan to play a spoil sport with our sister. We have enough Indians to do that. And I'm sure that there will be more as election process progresses. See, recently there was a youth conference of the DMK. I know I'm not talking politics. I know the hashtag issue is not politics, though I think that all of that we are talking here is politics, though not in support or against any political party. So at this DMK youth conference, there was a special guest who addressed the gathering. It was Muthuvel Karunanidhi. It was a generative artificial intelligence created avatar of Karunanidhi addressing the cadres. It's another thing that Karunanidhi was made to look very young and it didn't come out very well. That's a different thing. A Bangalore-based company had done it. Later, a few weeks later, again, Karunanidhi addressed a gathering at T.R. Balu's book release, pouring encomiums on the DMK MP. So, this is, and Imran Khan for that matter, last election in Pakistan, he campaigned, his avatar campaigned. In America, a lot of Republicans and Democrats are doing this. So, when we create a positive image of a dead man or woman to campaign for me, it's an avatar. But when my rival creates something to defame me, it becomes a deep fake. So it's all in the choice of words we use. But the reality is that generative AI has come to change our lives, especially the media. So whether it is regulated media, unregulated media, though I don't agree with the regulated, unregulated part, it's a self-regulation. I would rather call it professional and maybe amateur media with all these YouTubers coming into play. So deepfakes are here to stay. So it's a big challenge. Of course, there are techniques and it's a constant cat and mouse game happening with people like ChatGPT and others who make AI, Gen AI. There are also tools to detect AI. So ChatGPT's latest version also has options of overcoming or escaping that detection system. So that's an ongoing process now. So which is a deep fake? There are certain very rudimentary techniques which we can employ, but we really don't know. But this is also creating another problem of original content also being questioned as deep fakes. We have seen some of these allegations against politicians, and politicians very conveniently say that it's a deep fake. So this is something which I don't think there will be clarity, at least in this election, as the technology kind of settles down and tells us what is, even to detect a deepfake. So this can be used in two ways. And the positive aspect of it is AI is being used by the media. In fact, the Times of India we have started using two software, one in-house software of artificial intelligence to help reporters and editors do it. But again, it is at this stage, it's a very, very nascent stage and we cannot rely on it completely, especially when it comes to nuances and layering of reporting, as also fact-checking sometimes. It gets it very wrong. Just to give you an example, I won't take long. When it comes, we use a lot of AI-generated images nowadays, especially for illustration purposes, not the real pictures. So, you know the faux pas that has happened to all these big AI systems. So I won't get into the details. So when we asked to create an image of an Indian, it was a story about, say, an Indian with a whiskey glass on his head. So it created a sadhu on saffron robes dancing with a whiskey glass. This we did as a live example in our newsroom. So these are the biases, and we also know about how certain AI systems generated. When we asked about the Nazis, all cultural identities were represented as Nazis. So there are these pitfalls they are getting. So the more and more AI gets perfect, the challenges grow. I think the opportunities also grow. Talking about opportunities, see, maybe a reporter who takes an hour or two to write a 200-word story of a simple state, probably reporting this speech of mine, may take half an hour for a reporter to write, and now you feed just the bullet points which I have spoken, or any of the people here spoken, and in 3 seconds we have a 400-word story ready. But of course, that's not the final word. We'll have to work on it. We'll have to consider it as a first draft and work on it. So there are both challenges and opportunities that deepfakes and avatars and generative AI is throwing at us. I think we have to use it in the right way.
Thank you, sir. So I'll take that question forward with Mr. Alok. As a policy advocate organization, do you foresee any policies which can be put in place to deal with such disinformation and impact of disinformation?
No. Short answer. I'll tell you why. I'll elaborate why. We are so early in the days of AI. I think a lot of things are being called AI which are not AI. And if you speak to people who are well versed in the field, and as I tend to do so because my job requires me to do so, they are very suspicious about calling a lot of things AI. To give you an example, again, yesterday I read, Amazon in the US said that we're going to use AI to see your handbag, when you walk out of the grocery stores, our AI system will see everything that you have bought, automatically will bill you and send you the bill. No need for a cashier. Everybody was like, fantastic, wonderful technology. What was going on? Some person in India was sitting manually counting the number of things, putting it into a system and generating the bill. So somebody made the joke, which is representative of a lot of AI, that AI actually stands for actually Indian. So we have to be very, I think, very careful in accepting the claims of the technology itself and its face value. I have no doubt that there is a misinformation problem. I have no doubt that there is probably much easier solutions to it. You may all recall in 2017-18, there was a huge problem across the country of people being lynched on the basis of WhatsApp messages. And the problem was not because there was no law punishing murders or there was no law punishing, spreading false news. The problem was in the design of WhatsApp. What used to happen is that contextual messages or contextual videos which were sent between one person to a second person, when it was transferred to a third person, that context was being removed. And that fourth person had completely no context and the fifth person had no context. And by the time it reached a community which was already living in some anxiety, some level of social issues, it was received in a very different way. And this is something which has been, a lot of research has been done, a lot of work has been done. And it isn't so much for law and policy to fix. It is first for us to understand, I think, very carefully what the technology is actually doing. Let me just come back to your China example, and I'll tell you where I'm thinking about, how I'm thinking about it. If you can identify something as propaganda, it's useless. If I see something and I call it, this is propaganda, it is useless. The propaganda which works is one which you can never identify as propaganda. If I have to be a little cheeky, I will say no country does propaganda in the world better than United States of America, and that's because Hollywood is masterful at it. Why is Hollywood masterful at it? They're not taking instructions from someone in White House saying, make this film, make that film, anything like that. They are competing in the marketplace of ideas. Hollywood knows these ideas make people feel a certain thing in a certain way. Why is it that every one of us went and watched Top Gun? We are trying to make copies of Top Gun. India is making, China is making. Those films have made nowhere as much money as Top Gun because they know how to send a message that will survive scrutiny in the marketplace of ideas. China, with due respect, does not. Because you control information in your country, there is no marketplace for someone to question. What happens when we make law too early? We stifle the growth of the market, right? And I'm using the same terms that would come in any economic context. Supposing there is a new product which has come out in the market, nobody knows how well it works. If you start making regulations on day one, competition will die. The person who was able to figure it out first will have a monopoly. We don't want that in the context of information. Let the information flow. Let people develop responses to it. See, it's a bit like I'm using again from another different field, it's a bit like when a new virus enters our human population. Our bodies know how to respond. Some, unfortunately, will not be able to for various reasons. But eventually, we develop a way for that virus lives with us, or that bacterium lives with us. So, to me, I see this problem of deep fakes and AI. First, we have to be very critical about what is claimed in the technology. And I think, sir, you pointed out very well. It was a very badly done exercise. Anybody with some level of basic knowledge say this is not Criminality. So we should be careful about what the claims of the technology are. And two, before we make an intervention from the law and policy perspective, we should allow that marketplace of ideas to develop. Because people know, understand, resist. You allow people to be able to say, yeah, this looks fake, I'm not going to believe. And there's always going to be a permanent challenge. The point at which you enter into the market is when one person has a dominant voice. That is when you sort of enter. So I'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you, Alokji. I would now like to go to the next issue which is in our mind, which is one nation, one election. A lot has been spoken about this issue in the last few months. Some people think it is an issue. Some people think it is a smoke screen to divert from other issues. Is one nation, one election really possible, really practical? Of course, the Election Commission has given a statement saying that they are ready, they are capable, and it can be rolled out. That is what I remember reading. So I would like to ask Shri Gopal Swamiji on this whole one nation, one election process, what it is it possible, how is it going to be beneficial? And with that, we are also speaking in the same breath about combining it with the delimitation exercise, which people are saying we may come up in 2026. So what are these issues? And many of us have this question, sir.
Too much at one go. Okay. I, for one, would prefer one nation, one election. But I understand there will be problems. Problems in the sense, not of logistics. It can be arranged. There's not a problem at all. See, let me put it this way. This election also, there will be some states which will be going to poll simultaneously for their assembly. What does it involve? In the polling station, it involves one additional facility for casting your votes, which means one more VVPAT, one control unit, and one balloting unit. That's about all. Personal, one person additionally needed. Because what happens when you go into the polling station, you find one person who checks your slip of paper, and then he reads it aloud. The party representative note down saying that yes, party representative, as well as the next person, the official, notes down from his electoral roll, yes, this person is a voter in the electoral roll. Then he passes on to the third, you pass on to the third person where you sign, get your finger inked, then go to the polling booth and poll. What happens? One more machine is there. The next person will allow you to go and vote there after you have voted here, and you exit. So that's not a problem at all, in my view. Where is the problem? There's been over the years, after 1967, the cycles of elections have differed considerably. Now, this has meant that between 2019 and 2024, you had many state elections coming. And now, if all of it has to be coincided at one point of time, then certain amount of rearrangement has to be done. Now, I don't want to go into the entire thing. It is available in the report of the committee. The committee has what the committee is, in short, what the committee says is that you choose a particular point of time. Let us say 2029 parliament election. At that time, whichever state is yet to complete its 5 years, some would have completed, some would not have completed, all of it will cease at that particular point of time. Then it will be restarted from that time, coinciding. After that particular year, 2029, when everything coincides, I'm kind of summarizing something like about 100 pages in half a minute. So please forgive me if I'm not able to give you a full idea of this. After that particular time, there will be no more general elections excepting once in 5 years. If there is a dissolution of a house for some reason or other, or because of either no confidence motion, etc., election will be held, and that will be only for the duration which is pending. So let us say that 2029, one state elects assembly. 2031, there is a problem and the house is ineffective, dissolved. Then 2031, there will be an election held for that house, but its term will end in 2034. So this is the broad scheme which the committee has, the high-level committee has recommended. That's a procedural issue. They have also given a lot of information as to how it goes to save money, this and that. Practically speaking, I am of the view that once in 5 years means that the rest of the time at least is free for any activity. Otherwise, model code of conduct happens to be in position practically throughout 5 years. Some state or the other goes to poll at some point of time. So that is one of the issues. Campaigning will get reduced to one time. All these are advantages which are, one may believe, one may not believe. But I personally feel that in the longer run, it is much better. This is, in my view, okay. So, but what are the difficulties? The committee says that in this arrangement which they have made for the parliament and assembly elections, there is no, the amendment to Article 82 will be carried out in Article 82 and one more article. Now this 173 or something, this does not require any concurrence from the state assemblies. This is their recommendation, their view and recommendation. It had quite a few retired chief justices and legal officers, etc. So I'm quite sure they would have consulted. This is their view. Not that it cannot be challenged, it can be challenged. Then the elections to the local bodies. There the states are empowered, therefore the states' concurrence will be necessary. So their amendment, any amendment the parliament carries out has to be supported by the state assemblies also. That is the position in respect of one nation, one election. Now let us, I am shortening it because the time constraint. Now coming to the delimitation. A lot of theories are going around about delimitation issues, and some mischievously, some generally. Now, one of the reasons pointed out is that there is today, I mean, when we started in 1952, the average size of a parliamentary constituency is 7.5 lakh people. Today, the average is somewhere around 20. There are constituencies where it is about 31, 35 also. You can see in Chennai, Sholinganallur will be one of the biggest of constituencies, assembly constituency. It itself will be almost equivalent to almost about 10 lakhs or somewhere around that figure. So there is the one man, one vote principle is being violated. This is the ground. But I leave you with, I mean, the prescription from some of the commentators from foreign countries are amazing. Okay, purely armchair idealists talking about one nation, one person, one vote, and then commenting on the Indian scenario, saying that you have not equated. So that today in Uttar Pradesh, the average per MP is somewhere around 25 lakhs. In Tamil Nadu, it was 17.5 lakhs. So this is no. Okay. And the comment, I'm not quoting the person, I'll name the person, but I'll quote. The chronic unwillingness of India's political class to reallocate parliamentary seats in light of the country's changing demographics has led to severe and entrenched apportionment. As long as India's politicians defer tough decisions on legislative seats, India's states deserve the current crisis of representation will only deepen. Total misunderstanding of the Indian politician. I tell you, when it came to the question of the nation, the Indian politicians rose as one person and decided that the time period for delimitation will change from 1976 to 2000, again 2000 to 2026. Does it mean any difference? Yes. In Uttar Pradesh, the number of voters or number of the population per MP is higher. In Tamil Nadu is lower. The answer, if you try to equalize, South will lose, North will gain in number of seats. Is it in the interest of the nation? It is not. At least the politicians understood it. I fully appreciate. In fact, my great appreciation for their looking forward to the nation as a whole. In order to keep the nation united, they sacrificed. But these guys sitting in USA and writing from their, from their desktops, they will not understand the kind of sacrifices which our politicians agreed to. Okay. There I'll end it by saying that it doesn't mean, another 20 years when things will even out. Nothing wrong with that, if you continue with that. Accepting that, the delimitation now will have to bring in 1/3 of the seats for the women's representation, which means in every state will have the same proportion of 1/3. So Tamil Nadu seats will go up from 39 by 1/3, 13 seats more. UP will go up by 1/3, but the differences between the states in terms of this thing will remain. That doesn't matter. Per constituency, it will go down because 1/3 of seats will be added. That is good enough in my view because this is sacrifice they have made. And if you try to do anything differently by increasing, I don't think any person in his senses will try to increase the number of seats in the highly populated states, because it will definitely lead to some kind of dissonance in the polity. There'll be some kind of resistance from the southern states who will lose proportionately. Therefore, I think the politicians, what they did in 2002, I'm quite sure they're sensible enough to do it again in 2026. So the scaremongering which has been going around is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Alok, your views, and then I would like to hear Professor's views.
I'll very quickly make 2-3 points on the delimitation thing. There are 3 constituencies who I think are currently suffering because delimitation has not taken place. And just to respond to Mr. Gopal Swami's point, I think that wisdom was right, but circumstances have changed so much in the last 25 years. And I think the beauty of our constitutional system is it allows us space to not say once it was done, it was the best thing ever. Even our constitution has undergone change. And this is where I believe the change has to happen. What has happened since, I'll tell you what has changed since 2002. 2002, India is facing one of the most unique, unsolvable problems in the world economically. But I'll tell you what that is. It's called the 3-3-3 problem. The 3 richest states in India are 3 times richer than the 3 poorest states, which means the average person in Tamil Nadu, I'm not talking about Chennai, is 3 times richer than the average person in Bihar. As it brought. Unfortunately, we have not found a way to get them to converge. It is diverging. All economists around the world are scratching their head going, how is it that India alone is facing this problem? If you take large countries like the United States, like China, or the European Union as an entity, whenever there is one market created, the poorer states start becoming richer and the richer states' growth rate starts slowing down. India, the opposite is happening. Richer states are growing faster than the poorer states. Nobody is able to explain exactly why. This hadn't started so much in 2002, it's the last 20, and it's probably going to continue for another good 10 years. You cannot have the poorest states in the country, which is Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and a little bit above them, Madhya Pradesh, perhaps Rajasthan, also be the most underrepresented parts of the country. The union is not going to survive that. You cannot tell a person you will continue to be the poorest and your vote will not come. That's number one. Number two, we have seen a divergence in the population growth rate among general category persons, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe persons. If we had had the 2021 census, this data would have been there. We are only looking at electoral roll data and Bihar's caste census for whatever it is worth. Because delimitation hasn't taken place, Dalits and Adivasis across the country are losing out on representation, which is constitutionally entitled to them. No, I did that calculation, sir.
I immediately I have to.
Okay.
In the 2002 provision, the only change which was allowed to be made was the additional seats for SCs and STs was given.
Sure.
Yes.
No, I'm saying inter se, the percentage of SCs and STs in Bihar, they are not getting as much as they would have if it was actually in proportion to their population. So nationwide also there is a little bit of what do you call differentiation.
But is it a
Proportional to the population?
No, let me clarify. Let me
See,
clarify.
how is the within the state of Bihar?
Yes.
If there are 30 seats, or if I remember right, about 44 seats.
Yes.
Depending upon the population of SCs and SCs,
Yes.
the number of SC seats goes up.
Yes. The problem there is that the total number of seats for Bihar is fixed.
Yes.
Right? Now that means in fact, if it had increased the total number of seats, and if they're 30%, the 30% of the denominator would have increased. So that's my point. It is that this difference is there. The last point which I want to make is urban dwellers. Now I'll give you sir, you gave rightly the example of Chennai. I'll give you the example of Bangalore. In Bangalore, in central Bangalore, you have assembly constituencies with barely 1.5 lakh voters. You have constituencies in the edge of Bangalore which have now 7.5 lakh voters. Right? This is not sustainable. Even the parliamentary constituency, Bangalore, and I'm sure Chennai, Bombay, Delhi, every major city is hugely underrepresented. And this has consequences. This has consequences because Bangalore, and I'm sure Chennai too, is seen as a cash cow by politicians who believe we'll make our money from these cities and we'll spend it in the rural areas. Which means all urban areas in India are suffering a problem of lack of representation. And I believe this inter se allocation within the states is also a serious problem which we have deferred for too long.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
How does it, you said underrepresentation because of they suffer. Suffer in what way?
So,
By supposing in today's thing, supposing you change it,
yes.
instead of 39 seats in Tamil Nadu,
Yeah.
it should go up. Let us say if we fix 10 lakhs or 15 lakhs or 20 lakhs as the average, the number of seats will go up, let us say to 50 or 51.
Yes.
Okay, which means more seats will be allocated to Chennai. In what way an additional MP will add to the city? In what way will he add?
Yeah. So this is what I sort of currently, Bangalore counts for only 4 seats out of 28 in Karnataka.
Okay.
There is no party which wants to address Bangalore's concerns. And this, again, the
that
reason,
is-
and
that
this
is
is
where
a,
the
this is, no,
problem- okay.
because
Okay,
it's a political point.
I'll answer
And
I'll answer that.
everybody asks this question, how is Aam Aadmi Party so successful in Delhi and why don't we have an equivalent in Bangalore which have same population, same kind of wealth and so on and so forth? And I simply say Bangalore has 4 seats. Why will any Karnataka politician say, I want to devote my work? I mean, at the corporated level, 100%, right? Because you have a BBMP there. At the state level, it'll be like, yeah, sure, just put anyone. We're only going to be part of existing parties. And I know we are breaching a little bit of the no politics rule, but dynamics of the elections do not allow purely urban issues to come up as an issue at the state and the national election. So that's the simple point.
Now, let me ask a question. What is the role of an MP?
So
Very basics. What's the role of an MP?
I would say it is to represent their constituents
For what?
for the issues that the constituents are facing.
Okay. What is the role of the MLA?
It's also to represent the constituents.
So I think that's where the basic problem is. What is the role of the municipal corporation? Corporator?
Now, this is where we're going to get into a debate because I
You
believe
see,
they do the.
unfortunately, all of us are, we are the culprits. If your sewerage line is not working, you catch hold of the MP. No, you catch hold of a corporator. If the sewerage line is, if the water pipeline is not working, don't catch hold of your MLA. Yes, you tell him saying that this corporation needs more money. But if it is leaking, you don't catch hold of the MLA. This is where our basic understanding of what an MP should be doing. See, otherwise, you know what will happen? I'll just tell you. I mean, Honorable ex-MP is there. If everybody is going to ask him tomorrow, saying that, "Bhai, mere yahan pani nahi aa raha hai, mere yahan the sewerage is not working," he will start looking into it, but he will never spend time on the defense issues, on the external issues, on issues relating to the entire country. He will be spending time looking at he will become a gutter inspector, okay? Is it what we are looking for? No, it shouldn't be. We are making a big mistake in expecting the MP or the MLA to look into these issues which a local body man should look into. That is why we are starting this idea that there should be 15 lakhs. 15 lakhs should be the optimum. No, there is no optimum number of this kind at all. And mind you, this is a temporary solution for another 20 years in the interest of the nation. And let me also tell you how we means the entire developed part of this country has prospered because of one policy. Please let me take you back to that policy. 1952, there is a policy called freight equalization. It's a frightening equalization. If that freight equalization policy had not come, today Bihar, UP, etc. would have prospered much more than Tamil Nadu or western states. Because steel, aluminium, cement, everything would have costed here more than in the north, where they have the mines. This was done with a view to, so who sacrificed? Those states sacrificed so that we prosper. That was also a policy in the interest of the nation. Okay. So at that particular point of time, a decision was taken in the interest of the nation. Today also I am only saying, in the interest of the nation, take a decision. Don't go for this theoretical figure of what should be the denominator for deciding the number of seats. Accept the present position. Increase the number of seats for the SCs, ST in proportion to the population in each state, and also bring in 1/3 of the seats for the women candidates, and that should be good enough. In another 20 years, their population rates growth is also falling down. An equilibrium will be achieved maybe in about 20 years' time. That should be good enough for us to wait. Thank you.
I'll start with one nation, one election itself. So, from the perspective of overall thinking, I feel that we need to understand the both pros as well as cons. See, when you look at the pros, around 4,000 crore rupees are being spent by the central government for conducting one national election. So, plus almost the same that will be spending for the state elections also. So, which as sir was telling, which is happening around the clock. So, that is in fact leading or moving our nation into a campaign mode. So we were largely, one part of the other part of the nation will be in a campaign mode in one form or the other. And the other thing is that when you look at the fissures, the multilingual, multi-religious fissures that the campaigns create. So that is actually leading into bulging the fissures and bulging the disparity from the perspective of process. When you look at the problems, I feel that the regional issues might get overshadowed by the national politics, like in one way or the other. Because see, for example, if you take a state like Karnataka, where they vote exclusively different for national election and state election. So, like people themselves have an idea, like this is national election, so I should vote like this. This is a state election, so these are my priorities. So that changes from like regional and the national election. So one problem that we might encounter is where there's an overshadowing of regional issues by national politics. There's a possibility. But then, even my students were discussing it. So they had some doubts with regard to an issue, which they were telling in the morning also. Sir, for example, the student was asking me, sir, for example, if a non-confidence motion has been mooted against the government, and if they fail to pass it, so it becomes the responsibility of the opposition also to show the majority that they are able to capture the government or run the government. They call it as a motion, confidence motion instead of non-confidence motion. So, so in those kind of scenario, how we are taking further is actually not so elaborate or so clear as of now. So this is one issue that we need to disseminate, like how this is going to happen. Like even many of the people have a confusion that they have to vote single vote. Like it is a single voting for election of both Lok Sabha and the state constituency. So these kind of confusions are with regard, which is still like in various parts. So this dissemination is not actually happening, which I feel is one issue. Yeah.
I'll just supplement one issue. I mentioned to you about the report of the high-level committee. I personally, they have, as I said, they have mandated that you have one election for the entire country. And if during that period of 5 years, next general election, see one general election, which is both to the state as well as the parliament. The next general election will be 5 years later. In between, if there is any dissolution or for any reason, it would mean an election done, but it will be a by-election. It will be a mid-term election. That's what they have called it. I personally feel that they have missed a big opportunity. This was a time where we could have said 5 years. 5 years is the term. Take it or leave it. In the sense, 5 years will be the fixed term. If there is any dissolution called for, excepting in case of, of external aggression or total, internal problems, the rest of the time you should not dissolve, or you should not, do away with the assembly. It has to manage it itself. Another combination will come. There are provisions in some countries where when you go for a no confidence motion, you also have to say what will be the shape of the new government. I mean, who will form the new government. I think we missed that opportunity. I mean, in my personal view is that they should have thought of those issues also and avoided another election. Otherwise, what happens, supposing 10 states, there is some problem and there is floor crossing, this, that, that. So 10 states will go to election again in the 5-year period. And if the number grows, then the whole idea of one nation, one election gets, torpedoed totally. So they could have, I mean, my personal view, may or may not be acceptable to the high persons sitting in that committee. 5 years, fixed term. I mean, what happens in case of the Lok Sabha, 5 years fixed term, both Lok Sabha as well as all the assemblies, could have ensured that in between elections are totally avoided. Thank you.
Just adding point,
Sir,
so there's an
Krishnamurthy, sir.
additional point to the same thing.
Yeah,
On the simultaneous elections, one suggestion was made by one of the members, Mr. Subhash Kashyap, saying that a constructive no confidence should be introduced in the constitution. What the high-level committee did was an oversimplification of the issue by saying that whenever there is a fall in the government due to lack of confidence or any other reason, you have another election, which means suppose there is a lack of confidence motion passed 1 year before the due date, again you have an election. The purpose of simultaneous election is to reduce the elections, but they have produced or given opportunity for more elections to take place. This is where I think they have made a mistake. The suggestion made by Mr. Subhash Kashyap, one of the members of that committee, was worthwhile to get over the problems of the parliamentary or the Westminster system of democracy. So you must say that if a person brings a no confidence motion, he must also name a leader for the remaining period of the motion. But you cannot just leave it to another election to be held. This is the basic flaw in the report of the high-level committee. It's very easy to say that in 29 you have the election. Suppose the parliament itself there was a lack of confidence after the 29 election, after 2 years, what happens? You will have another election? So you must find a solution to that, and that solution has not been given. You say go ahead with the Westminster system and still stick on to the date. But that is not the way problems can be solved. It is necessary to ensure that there is no need for additional elections, and that is the only way to go about. I suppose, I'm sure, as far as the constitutional and the political challenges will certainly receive more attention. It is not going to be so easy, but as an administrator, as an economist, I would say it is certainly desirable, ideal, but in actual implementation, you will face challenges. Thank you.
Just one comment. As somebody mentioned, it is still the report. Nothing much has been heard about it, excepting that it was presented. I think this gives an opportunity for us to look into the report in depth. And I was really surprised. A lot of statistical information has been given there about the advantages of one nation. Whether those are well-founded or ill-founded is all something which economists and others, management specialists, etc., can look into. I think this time between now and maybe another year provides us the opportunity to look into those issues and see whether they make any sense at all. I mean, I'm not being an economist, I'm not being able to, accepting that I saw there's a very big report and I couldn't read the entire thing. So there is a lot of information given. Whether that is well-founded or ill-founded is something which all of us as interested citizens should be able to look into and decide. Thank you.
I now have a very important issue which I would like to have your views on. They say democracy is the greatest good for the greatest number. And I am talking here about competitive welfarism. We see every political party competing with each other to go to the population and say, you elect me and I will get the government to give you this and give you that. So, sir, what are your views on?
In fact, you gave a very dignified term calling it as competitive welfarism. It is a competitive popularism. The political parties vie with each other and then they promise so many things. In fact, I don't want to go into the individual political parties' manifestos and so on. It's very distressing to see that there is no accountability at all of the promises made by the political parties in their manifestos or in their whatever promises that they make outside the manifestos. But this is one area where we need a lot of regulation, because I think right and left freebies are promised and then later on they find it difficult to implement them. So this is again, it went up to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, Mr. Datar from Chennai was arguing the case for guidelines to be issued. Unfortunately, Supreme Court did not give any guidelines. On the other hand, they said the Election Commission will give guidelines. But the Election Commission doesn't have a statutory authority to issue such guidelines. So it is necessary for a suitable statutory law. In fact, one of the suggestions we have always been making for the Commission and on my personal level is that we should have a separate law regulating the functioning of the political parties. You have a law for companies, you have a law for partnership, you have a law for societies, and so on. But you don't have a law for political parties. Most of the Commonwealth countries have now a law regulating the political parties. So it is necessary for us to regulate these political parties, regulate their accounting, their financing system, regulate their promises made through the manifestos. Without any batting of the eyelid, they promise the whole moon to the voters. And the voters, of course, they do not understand the implications of financial implications of these proposals. So, of course, there are many suggestions. I'm not going into those suggestions, but there is an urgent need for a law on political parties, which has of course been, a draft has been attempted by Association for Democratic Parties. It needs to be changed, amended, retuned and so on. But it is necessary that such promises are not, given without any accountability at all. Thank you.
Would Mr. Arun Ram like to say a few words on?
Yeah, as a matter of personal policy, I would say there should be no restriction at all. So let politicians say that they can deliver the moon, and when they don't, I think we need more awareness for public to realize who can deliver and how. There has been a proposal recently which said that when you're making a promise, especially which is going to be an economic burden on the exchequer, you have to tell also how you're going to mobilize the resources. I think that's a reasonable regulation rather than a restriction. I think eventually politicians who make false promises will stand exposed, and that is a normal democratic process we have to go through, however painful it's going to be.
So,
2 points. One, of course, I entirely agree that it should be left to the politician to decide what he will give, what he will not give, what he will promise for getting the vote or not getting the votes. That should be an area which cannot be regulated and should not be regulated either. But one thing, a nagging issue, is supposing today a particular government spends a lot of money, borrows a lot of money, and lives beyond its means, which means that it is mortgaging the future generations' economic independence. So what is the accountability which can be brought in on that issue? Can independent agencies study and say, all right, now, this is at the end of 5 years, if this government's policies are implemented, promises are implemented, this is what it will leave into. At the end of the year, at the end of 5 years, give out the information. Okay, in 5 years, this particular party running this government for 5 years led to deterioration of the finances of the state or improvement of the finances of the state. Can that be brought in? I know that being brought in may not change the views of majority of the voters, because we see this day in and day out. In 2002 or 2001, Supreme Court mandated that every candidate must give a list of criminal cases against him and the list of properties he owns and his liabilities and assets. Has it made any difference? No, it has not. The percentage of people with serious criminal cases has actually gone up from 15% to 30% in the parliament. Elsewhere it is more than 30% also. So it doesn't seem to have made a difference, at least until that time. But until now, maybe in future it may make. So with that view, I think some institutions at least should study at the end of 5 years, put out a report saying that this is the end of the term of this particular party, its governance has led to this kind of a situation. Whether it will make any change in the mindset of the voters is something which we'll have to leave it to the future generation to see whether they see an advantage or disadvantage. Thank you.
I think it should also be the mandate of media to do this work which you've been referring to.
Quickly, Professor, your views before I go to Alok on whether there should be a law.
One thing we need to understand is that if you look at the manifestos, there is a growing trend that vulnerable category people are being given money. Like they're telling that, let's say 1,000 rupees, let's say 10,000, 1 lakh rupee will be credited into your account. This is actually a serious problem. Why? Because you're actually trying to make the vulnerable community vulnerable again. You're not giving them any avenue to come up the ladder by providing them employment opportunity or providing them other avenues so that they come up in their life in one form or the other. Let's say, for example, if a person who is earning 30,000 rupees and they are using the public transport free of course, that actually that need to be seen in a very interesting way. Why? Because whether this person should be given a free transportation or not is a question, and that ultimately leads to the loss of the exchequer itself, as sir was telling. And finally, it end up borrowing beyond the limit which is prescribed, end up in a huge debts, and that is precisely seen in case of various states. See, for example, in case of Kerala, they have been fighting in the Supreme Court for more money. So Supreme Court itself made an observation that this financial situation of the state is not right at the moment. So that will go to a situation or a scenario where what we have seen in case of Sri Lanka, where we have gone beyond our limit in terms of loan, and we'll end up in a situation where we cannot repay the amount. And precisely the trend at the moment is to woo people. But that is actually be done by giving freebies and especially cash, like giving them a wholesome money, saying that this is the money that the government is going to give in your account. But rather, why can't they go for providing them opportunities, avenues which can actually generate employment, which can sustain them, giving them 1,000 rupees. I'm not actually degrading it, but the place where it takes up is an interesting thing that we need to debate upon.
Rahul is talking about the old wisdom of whether you give him the fish or teach him fishing. But the fact remains that sometimes we tend to be making things oversimplistic by saying that, see, yes, we have to make a distinction between what is a freebie and what's a welfare measure. And over the years, we know fairly well what empowers people in the long run and what doesn't. But that doesn't mean that giving a cash dole is always wrong. So if we've done in terms of a reporting, not a very scientific study or a survey, but then we found that the 1,000 rupees given to women has enhanced their life in many ways because they're less dependent on. But it's a very questionable thing. Yeah, sometimes that 1,000 rupees goes to the husband's pocket, who goes and drinks. That's a different thing. But then there is a bit of empowerment happening there. I don't know. I don't have the wherewithal to gauge how they have empowered. But in terms of free travel, I can say with bigger conviction that it has empowered women because they can travel to work, they can take up new work. It has broadened the horizon slightly more than what it used to be. So I think we should resist the temptation to oversimplify welfare measures and see the nuanced, layered ways in which our politics and welfarism works.
I'm going to start a society of lawyers against more laws. No law. No, and for exactly the point that Mr. Krishnamurthy and Mr. Gopalswamy made, I think we need an institution. The UK has an Office of Budget and Reconciliation, if I'm not mistaken. And the power of that office is that it led to the Prime Minister resigning 2 years ago. Liz Truss and her Finance Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, they announced a budget which was considered one of the most radical. Everybody asked a simple question. Have you done the mathematics on this? They were like, we haven't. And in a few days, this office came out with the numbers and said, this is unsustainable. Markets collapsed. It got to the point that the Bank of England was like, our economy is going to collapse. Please withdraw this now. They hadn't even brought it into effect. It was just the announcements. I think that perhaps may be more effective here. Because at the end of the day, and I'll give you the Karnataka example, the 5 guarantees that people talk about. I think Mr. Arun Ram has mentioned the bus guarantee. It has had a great knock-on effect. It has revitalized Bangalore's public transport. The number of people who use it have gone through the roof. There is more pressure to improve it. Government is buying more buses. So it's having a good knock-on effect. I'm not so sure if the electricity scheme has had that benefit. So Mr. Arun Ram was saying, we maybe can't take a very simplistic approach. Maybe we need some kind of expert to say, government has announced this scheme. This is the cost. This is our budget position. This is where the resources will be mobilized. I fundamentally trust the Indian voter to be able to say, this is crazy. We can't afford this year. We can do that next year. Or maybe this is a great revenue. Please, government, find a way to get more money. We'll be happy for this. So I believe this is something which we need a good institution like the Office of the Budget, and I'm forgetting the full name, which isn't there in the UK, which puts out this data in the public domain for people to be able to respond to it.
Okay. We were speaking about, can the exchequer afford freebies? So my next issue, which many of us are here thinking about, is how can I afford to contest an election when we have a central minister say, I don't have the resources to contest an election? It is common knowledge that elections have become very expensive, very complicated, and therefore capable, competent people, a large number of them are kept out of this process. So I would like to have your views on that, sir.
Surana shunned the thought of contesting elections. if you are thinking of that, I think hats off to your courage. Okay. I confess that there is no solution at all. Our economy, our mindset is so warped. So much of corruption going around, all with a view to either making yourself rich. Now, there are exceptions, of course. There are honorable exceptions amongst the MLAs, MPs, etc., but by and large, you generate a lot of money so that you can contest the next election. That's an investment for the next election. For your look at the way the assets have gone up. It's a fact. And I have long ago decided I will never think of contesting elections, and I would advise you also.
When I retired, one of the pressmen asked me on that day whether I will enter politics. My reply was, considering the corruption, criminality and the chickenery in the Indian political scenario, I will never ever contest election, is what I said. The point I want to make is, it has become highly expensive to contest elections. If Mr. Surana dreams of becoming a member of parliament, he must equip himself with a lot of money, some of which may be accounted, some of which may not be accounted. The issue is, I know it has received a lot of attention because of the recent Supreme Court judgment, but there is a need. There is a need, and I think it is, if you want, make it completely free, allow anybody to contest election, allow anybody to raise more funds, like what happens in the USA. You don't have any restrictions, money is raised, and people contest elections. Do you want that system? Or you want a system where an ordinary man can contest election if he wants to fight the elections? You have to choose. If you want an ordinary person to contest the elections, it is absolutely necessary to bring a solution. Because one of the solutions I have been talking about is public funding of elections through a national election fund, and which has to be, of course, monitored by the Election Commission, and the guidelines to be done in consultation with all the political parties. Maybe some people may have some objection to that, but you have to find a solution if you want an ordinary person to contest elections.
95 lakh is 95 lakh is the upper limit right now for a Lok Sabha candidate. So in reality, we all know the 95 lakh must be a daily expense for a minor political party nowadays. 95 lakh is something a political party spends every day on election. We have leaders telling us off the record. So I think Nirmala Sitharaman's comment was bad PR, according to me. Yeah, serving the nation is quite an expensive proposition.
Sir, you mentioned in the passing about criminality among the candidates. So I have a two-part question. We see a rising number of candidates in the Lok Sabha and Assembly elections, or even the Rajya Sabha, having criminal cases pending against them. That is one part of the question. And the second part is, what is your opinion about officers, serving judges, taking up political positions, becoming members of parliament, etc., immediately after retirement?
The first portion was about
Criminals.
Criminals, yeah. Well, I think all of the public in India will certainly like to see criminal record-free members of parliament and members of legislatures. But then our judicial system is such that it takes its own time to decide issues because of various reasons. I'm not blaming any particular thing, but there are reasons for judicial delays, and there is also a case that just because the case is not decided, why should I be prevented from contesting the election? Because the Election Commission had made a suggestion long ago, I think it still holds good, that at least in cases where a person has been charged with a serious or heinous crime and is punishable with a punishment of 5 years of imprisonment or more, such persons should be debarred from contesting the elections, or should be barred from contesting the election, if a competent court has framed a charge sheet accusing him of certain, at least prima facie charge has been framed against him. If such persons are allowed to contest elections, then there is no hope. So it is better to statutorily bar them from contesting the elections. Now, is it possible by law? Before that, I'll just answer one question. If a civil servant is, found to be involved in any irregularity, then he is suspended for during that period. And once the charge is either proved or not proved, the decision takes place whether he can continue in the service or not. So the right to contest election is not a fundamental right. So it is when once there is a person who is charged with serious offences, and if the court has framed a charge sheet, prima facie charge sheet, not the police, the court has framed the charge sheet of heinous crime, then in such cases we have taken the stand that they should be barred from contesting the elections. Now, is this possible or not? But what is very strange is no political party talks about the need for preventing such people from contesting the election, because I also hold the view the weakest link in our democracy is the political parties. And unless and until they become more and more democratic, we will have problems like this. It is necessary that at least criminals or alleged criminals charged with serious offences should be barred from contesting the election. The second point is about the officials or judges, etc., contesting the election. Well, as of now, so long as there is no law prohibiting it, you cannot prevent people from contesting. You want an improvement? Yes, I would suggest give a gap of 3 or 5 years. Thereafter, they can contest election, particularly appointments of governors and so on. It is a good practice to think of some kind of a cool-off period, so that there is no allegation later on that the performance in the earlier job was politically biased.
I'll just supplement with one point. Number one, the heinous crimes, what the Election Commission recommended under category of heinous crimes, dacoity, robbery, rape, etc. The 3 or 4 or 5 offences, and suggested that those who are charge sheeted should be excluded. I mean, law must be passed. Now, I must say that in 2007, we almost came to that legislation being accepted. I mean, in the sense that the Parliamentary Standing Committee discussed it. One of the members came to me and said, our members have one doubt. 6 months seems to be too little. And what we had suggested was that prior to the nomination, 6 months, within period of 6 months prior to the nomination, if any charge sheet is there, it should be ignored. It should be prior to that 6 months period. This is just to ensure that, no vindictive cases are filed, and if charge sheet is issued the last minute, 1 day before the nomination, he is debarred. So we had suggested that you keep a 6 months time period. He said, we felt that 6 months is too little. I said, you are at liberty to say 1 year. So if a charge sheet is issued in the period 1 year immediately prior to the nomination, don't take into consideration, but anything before that, if somebody is charge sheeted, exclude him until the time the case is finalized. He said, very likely we will. Then a few days later, he met me and said, a very big lawyer torpedoed the entire thing. Thank you.
Let me just add one point. I think I would agree with the suggestion, with the only caveat being it should be when the charges are framed by the court. Yes, because charge sheet is what the police files. Charges, right, that's what. By the court, right, so I just wanted to clarify that point. And I think it's necessary, it should be brought in. But there's some fascinating research which sort of went out into the public and said, that this person has criminal charges? They said yes. You voted for them? Yes. The interesting question is why? And the answer that keeps coming up again and again is that we think this is a person who knows how to deal with the government. We want this person in the government so that they can help us deal with the government. The underlying problem, therefore, that the voter is thinking that this person is going to solve is the average person in this country cannot deal with the government, right? And this goes from me trying to get one registration done for a house, all the way to a person saying, can you please put my name in that list for whatever, subsidy or something like that. That's the fundamental problem. If we had a bureaucracy which sort of said, you don't have to come to us, we'll come to you, people will be like, yeah, I don't need you to do this, I just need you to be my representative. So you'll automatically start making better choices. So that was one point that I sort of wanted to make. The second point, which I think is a fallout of something else which was done for a different purpose, there was the anti-defection law, which I believe the Supreme Court made a huge mistake in upholding in Kyoto Holohan's case. I had the privilege to be on a podcast with Justice Venkatachalaya, and I asked him this question: was your judgment, would you want to reconsider your judgment? He said, when we passed it, it was right. Today I will not give that judgment. Something about the anti-defection law has failed. And political parties' incentive is, we want somebody who is pliant. We want some guy who knows I have to keep the ministers or the party heads happy so that my case will not move quickly in the courts. So I think these two perverse incentives are ruining the way that and which is we are seeing it as the result of persons with criminal charges and even persons with illegal money getting into elections. And these are difficult problems to solve. But I suppose there's the two legal changes. So I'm finally suggesting legal changes. One would be what Sir suggested, which is, if charges have been framed, I think 6 months is a more than reasonable period. That person should be disqualified, number one. Number two, we need to fundamentally reorient our anti-defection law.
I'll just supplement with a small, I agree with what he said. Earlier, the criminals used to work for the candidates. The criminals then decided, I do all the work and you get all the, so why not I contest? That's how more and more of these people came to the...
Making it less bureaucratic, right?
Okay, the second point which Sir was telling about the judicial officers and the high-level officers joining the political party, we have an understanding of the separation of power and judicial review, which we think is sacrosanct, where the judges who can examine the policies, programs of government, and they can nullify it also. But all of a sudden, when they out of their office, joining in a political party, the very next day questions the integrity of their service itself. That would, especially in cases where there is controversies, and after their tenure, immediately joining in a political party, that would create a sense of question, the sense of doubt in the mindset of people. So a reasonable period should be there after the retirement to join the political parties. That would actually create a sense of honesty, especially on judicial institutions.
I do agree with the proposal, but I also think that there should be a distinction made between members of bureaucracy and judiciary. It's not the same when an IAS officer, say, like V.K. Pandit is going to be Naveen Patnaik's deputy. That's one thing, but when a retired Supreme Court judge becomes something else, that's quite a different thing.
Just supplement that on the judge's point. Personally, I feel the bigger problem is judges accepting post-retirement positions. Enough research has shown, and this is verifiable data, how judges' decisions start becoming more pro-government once they start approaching retirement, right? This is data taken from the Supreme Court, but I don't think High Court would be very fundamentally different. That to me is the more dangerous problem. And I know my colleague Orgo Sen Gupta has done this research on how many post-judicial appointments are. They're in the hundreds. Judges entering politics, handful. Right? If you take the entire history of post-independence India, maybe 10 judges may have done that. And because politics, standing for elections is inherently risky. And just to give an example, two very prominent bureaucrats, one from the police and one from the regular IAS cadre, they resigned to stand for elections in Karnataka recently. Both lost horribly. Their position didn't guarantee them this thing. Their party didn't give them a quote-unquote winning ticket. To me, I would say it's okay. You're putting your fate in the hands of the people. Janta Janardhan, as this country says. I'm okay with that. What I will find problematic, and I think this is where that intervention is needed, especially High Court and Supreme Court judges taking up gubernatorial positions in the, nominated positions, tribunal chairpersons. I think that we need to seriously re-examine. I think that is the source of the trouble.
Thank you. I would love to engage in a conversation on these issues, but we are running out of time. So I have one question for our senior journalist. There is a growing trend of ownership of media getting into hands of corporates and also political parties having their own media wings. What do you think is the impact of this on elections and democracy?
This is an age-old question whether, I'll go back to a basic question, whether journalism is a profession or a business. I think it's both. It's both. It's probably one of the businesses where two wings are in contradiction with each other. I'll tell you, my daily conundrum is that I always fight, as a representative of journalists, in constant fight with the people who bring in money, the response, the space sellers, right? So they want more space, and I want more space. So this conflict is always there. And the advertiser will have his expectations, which I may not be able to meet if I have to stick to my journalistic ethics. So this, yes, let me admit that there is a constant conflict within. Now, this is a business. There is nothing wrong in a media house making money. There's a lot of good in getting money, which is beyond people like me getting my monthly salary. So, profit-making media house is not a sinful media house. Let's be very clear about it. So, my point is that even when you make money, when you have a typical corporate setup, which is inevitable in today's media industry, we can also practice good journalism. There is no conflict. Of course, there will when a corporate owns a media house, they will have their corporate interest. But there are certain ways in which this can be. My point has always been that good journalism will bring in money. So that if the Malik knows that good journalism is going to keep you in good stead, the conflicts will be less, not that they can be eradicated. And I think it's finally up to the integrity of the journalists and editors to uphold the values of journalism and present internally that it is not always in conflict with the business interests. It is a balancing act, and it's something which we have to live with.
Sorry, I'll just add one point on the business of journalism. TV is regulated in a very different way from news media, is very different from social media. I think TV, I won't say the source of the problem, but it's a fact. The barrier to entry is getting that license from the central government. You have to get a license to start a channel. That involves, and I know all media owners have said this, it's a fairly high expense. You have to invest a lot, which means your incentives change a little bit. Your incentives are like, I have to recoup this very high investment that I have made. Supposing I'm a journalist who starts a blog, every day I will write, hard hitting. I only need to sustain myself. There is no big initial investment for me. Automatically, my incentives to be independent, impartial are slightly different. And likewise, maybe newspaper might be something somewhere in between. I personally believe that it's time to relook this regulatory mechanism for television. And it's not because I think people running television studios are bad or necessarily not good at what they do. We have created a system where the incentives for them to act in a particular way is forcing them to act in a way which I personally think, I have stopped watching television news. My generation of people have stopped watching television news. I actively turn it off even when my parents are watching it, and I've told them now, please, I will send you all the links, I'll send you all of this thing, please read from there. And again, it's not because these people are necessarily bad or don't know what they're doing. The incentives for them have been created in a way which makes them act in that particular way, which I think is possibly harmful to the news industry. So ownership per se is not a problem to me. You want to have a wholly owned channel, put it in big bold letters that this is a channel on behalf of party A, party B. People are sensible, they will know. People distill the facts. What is dangerous is if all channels believe, I have to recoup my investment, there is only one way of doing this, which is keeping the ruling government happy, we are not going to get a free media. Because the incentive for them is to keep the ruling party happy, or else your license may be gone, or your broadcasting rights may be gone, or this huge investment that you have put in setting up a studio and hiring all these people might be gone overnight. I think we have to analyze it in that way and see the legal changes that are necessary in that perspective.
Let me add one point here. I would go by again, my previous theory that finally, I don't know how long can you do stories just to please somebody or because you are afraid of somebody. Because finally your credibility is at stake. And the market forces will decide essentially, because your if you have to function as a house of journalism, it's a different thing. Then if you have to make news entertainment, then it's a different thing, which television has more or less become, as he was saying. But if you're doing quality journalism, credible journalism, with less biases, I think ultimately you will remain the front runner in the field of journalism, may not be in the field of business of journalism.
One area which I think needs to be regulated is the cable TV. In 2004, when I was in the Election Commission, we were told by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, 50,000 cable TV operators were there at that time. I'm sure the number must have increased substantially now. And it is not possible to regulate them at all. And now you're talking about TV channels, print media and so on. But this is another area where a lot of very adverse influences are taking place. Though the Election Commission brought some changes in way of advertisement regulation in this cable TV and so on, but there are subtle ways of getting over it. They design programs against parties, and you will be surprised to know that it is the most neglected area, no regulation at all. This is again to be taken into account.
The other thing we need to know, like think about is about the opinion formation. Like these platforms are basically creating opinion. So the opinion formation is now, as Sir was telling, is paid or is planned. So there's an articulation that happens which is narrowed down through these platforms with the help of social media, which is also like which in fact, if you look at the youngsters, where the half of the opinion is formed through the social media platforms, which become influential, which actually is the result. Why? Because political parties started using social media platforms, like they started investing more in their platforms.
One other area is YouTube. Anybody can start anything, anybody can say anything and get away with it also. You see, there is a Tamil saying, Thadi eduthavan tandalkaran. So YouTube eduthavan panakaran.
So Alok, this question is for you. I requested the views of Mr. Arun Ram on the influence of corporate ownership and political party ownership on elections and stuff like that. We are also seeing in the last 15-20 years a mushrooming of NGOs, and we are also seeing a lot of these NGOs are getting foreign funding to push a certain narrative. So what are your views on the regulatory part? Do you suggest anything to regulate that?
I think that regulatory mechanism is there, which is FCRA. Personally, I like to divide NGOs into two very broad categories. There are those which are in the business of, well, when I say business, please loosely, I don't mean in the...
It's not a bad word.
Yeah, but no, if you use it in the wrong context, who are, say, providing schools, healthcare, building waterworks, and so on and so forth. And there are those who are more involved in the institutions of governance. By these, I mean, and I will put Vidhi in that category. We are in a category where day in, day out, we speak to people in government, we speak to people in the judiciary, we speak to other civil society members, we speak to a lot of people around the governance system. The former category, I believe, the government's regulation of foreign funding to them must be limited, right? Just make sure you're using it for what you have said. That's it. That's all. You shouldn't say, put it in a separate bank account, limit to this 5%, this 10%. That I think that is onerous. You're actively harming the eventual beneficiaries. And the eventual beneficiary is who? That person sitting somewhere in Latur going, why am I not getting water in my tap? For the latter category, I believe you should not be taking foreign funding at all. And I say this because we took this choice at Vidhi in a sort of for a principled reason and a pragmatic reason. Pragmatic reason was we can't be spending our time meeting the regulatory requirements of how to take foreign funding and so on. we don't have the energy, we don't have the time, we'd rather do our work. The principal reason being, I'll assume the best faith foreign funding, right? I assume that Mr. Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Rebecca, I forget her name, they have the best interests of Indians in mind. At the end of the day, whatever change they propose doesn't affect them. It might make them feel good. But if that same person is somebody in India, for better or worse, they are affected by that change. They may promote good ideas, it still affects them. They may promote bad ideas, it affects them. And I don't just mean large laws affecting insolvency, bankruptcy, which is also the work that we do. I fundamentally believe the latter category of NGOs should be funded by Indians. And I say this consciously because yes, it's not like there's a shortage of money in this country for that purpose. The reason why it should be funded is not because you're keeping yourself occupied. There is a huge government capacity problem. NGOs come into existence to fill a government capacity problem, whether it is in building more schools or providing water, or as we in Vidhi do, advise the government on how to make laws. The problem isn't going to go away just because you say there is no foreign funding. It just means there is nobody to address the problem. And we've been working with a lot of our funders on this to say, please fund more such organizations. Don't just fund one Vidhi and say all the problems are solved. And I said this in other public fora also. It will be a tragedy if there is only one Vidhi in this country. There should be 10, if not 100. So I personally believe the second category of not-for-profits, think tanks, bodies which produce research, which inform and influence public debate, they should be funded locally, whatever model you want to find. But we should understand what is the problem that they're filling, and also encourage people who have the wealth in this country to say, please promote this. You are not just keeping yourself happy or getting your income tax deduction. You are doing this to invest in the country. It's not an investment which might give you a return like in the stock market, but it's an investment which will show returns 10, 15, 20 years later.
I have a question for our honorable election commissioners. Yes, sir, you mentioned a few minutes ago that the right to contest elections is a fundamental right. No, it's not. It's not a fundamental right. There has been a lot of discussion in the recent years that the right to vote must be made a duty to vote if we have to have a more representative democracy.
I think you are meaning compulsory voting. Actually, I'm sure Mr. Gopal Swami also will have similar views. It's very easily said than done. Compulsory voting, there are very few countries they have it. But what is more important is, in most of these countries where they have 90 to 95% of the people vote there. But if in a country where we have only to 70 to 75% of the people voting, and in a country of India's size, the election commission will be charged with the responsibility of chasing the remaining 25% of the voters, and they will lose all their time instead of conducting the elections. I agree, it's a desirable thing, but it is not practicable as of now.
I have a slightly small different take on this. Don't try to fine everybody. Okay, need not. But set an example. This is why I will look at it. Look at the constituency which is the lowest polling. So, all of us will come in, Chennai. Within that, look at the lowest polling station. Fine all of them, especially if any of them, fine all of them who are well educated, fine them heavily. Because they should understand that it is necessary for them also to participate, not be armchair idealists, criticizing all and sundry left, right and center. But when it comes to voting, you sit at home and enjoy the cool breeze of the afternoon or your AC. So start with that. Instead of fining the 25%, select those who are well educated, still do not vote. I'll just take one example for that. November 2008, there was this, the Bombay blast. Okay. Within a day or two, there was a huge rally. People carrying candles, candlelight, demonstrations and processions. 4 months later, Maharashtra went into poll. That particular area where there is so many candle lights polled a poor 22%. So we're all very good at candle lights, but when it comes to putting your finger on the electronic voting machine, you just don't care. But it's good for optics to go on before the TVs.
Incidentally, the Election Commission has invited municipal commissioners from 16 states. And Dr. Radhakrishnan representing Chennai is a dignified representative from here. Chennai Corporation is also called for its poor voting.
We started about 16 minutes late, so if I have your permission, can we now have a few questions from the audience? So, yes, the floor is open for questions. Yes.
Yes, my question, should I be standing up? Yeah. My question to both the Honorable former election commissioners, chief election commissioners of India. Why was it so important or so necessary to not have a nominee of the Chief Justice of India in the selection panel of, this year's selection committee of election commissioners? And we just have a cabinet minister, the prime minister, and a leader of the opposition, and we saw the manner in which the election commissioners have been appointed. I mean, so why was it so necessary that there shouldn't be a nominee? Yes, thank you.
I will not go into the issue of how the composition should be done, but I will certainly answer the question: why not the judiciary? After the appointment is done, something goes wrong, where do you go? You go to the court. So imagine a situation where the Chief Justice or his representative sits in the committee and one of the selection goes wrong. What will you do? You go to the court and tell the honorable judge, dear honorable judge, you are sitting on the selection committee, it went wrong. What is your take? What's your answer? You see, courts are the final arbiters of the issue. They should not get into deciding these issues, because when it is a conflict of interest, when you go there and tell him saying that, this happened, in a CBI director selection, the man was found to be incompetent. So can you go and tell the honorable judge saying that you selected an incompetent fellow? What kind of a judge you are? Can you ever talk in that fashion? But that is what it is. So let us not have any representative from the judiciary, because they are the final arbiters of the dispute. Anything which comes up, they will have to decide. And their position should not be compromised. Their offices should not be degraded into doing this kind of a thing which an executive should do. Yes, there is how the composition of that committee should be. There could be a lot of discussion on that and decision as to how there should be parity maintained or how it can be broad-based, etc., etc. All that is fine, but never involve a person from the judiciary, because you are reducing the dignity of that office.
I'll add two more reasons to what Mr. Gopal Swami has said. I personally don't believe the judges have the remotest competence to decide who should be the election commissioner. We were having this conversation just before the panel started, and I was half jokingly telling sir that the chief election commissioner has to be a general who has to move troops around, has to be a theologian to understand which days are religious significance, has to be an expert in logistics to figure out how various things have to happen. None of these are judicial work, right? I can still understand CBI, there is investigation, there is police process, you need to know who has adhered to the law better. I believe the work of the election commission is so removed from what the judiciary does. I genuinely believe Chief Justice adds nothing to the process. We can discuss and debate who else can it be. I completely agree on that point. But I believe, given the nature of the task of the Election Commission, it was a very bad judgment from the Supreme Court, to be very honest, saying that Chief Justice of India should be part of that particular.
Introduction of technology like EVMs made so many decades before. Even after that also, we are conducting 7 phases of elections. current year also. I know the terrain issues that are northeastern, that will take another. But it should be reduced to 3, 2, 1 at least. Because if something happens, we are waiting for 1.5 months for the result. Is it too long for waiting? In spite of all these technological developments and all, internet and all these things, EVMs, we are not able to make it. If something happened between the southern phase of election, any incident, we are having so many proven things happened in between the phases of election that changed the election results. Everybody knows that and the honorable election comes.
I don't know that. I don't know that. Please let me know. What kind of...
Rajiv Gandhi's death happened.
That's all right. I mean, that's part of the...
Election, 2 phases, sir. First election, one party came, and after the death, the second phase,
That's all right.
some other party came. So it is
See, that is one-off. That is one-off incident, sir. You can't extend that to every this thing. Okay. I will answer that. I will simply answer that. Yeah, I will answer that. I will. See, first, Indians should not be so passionate about elections as to disrupt everything. You see, you are so passionate that in your campaigning, you will start fighting with each other. Enough number of fights which take place. So you need, like in USA, where the elections are held in one day across the country. The day we are peaceful in election, we decide to just go and vote, not fight with each other. Everything is possible. One day is possible. In 33 days, I counted for the advantage for the members. 33 days, you can finish the election. 33 is statutorily minimum. Okay? If you count the number of days required for every step of the operation, 33 days you can complete. There are neighboring countries. I have gone to Sri Lanka, I have gone to Maldives, I have gone to Mauritius. One day election throughout. Small islands, yes. But every polling station is handled by women. Can you imagine a situation here? There is so much of violence which takes place that it's only now that after so many years in Bihar and UP, polling stations are not captured anymore. Okay? And tell me, which of those other countries money is given for voting? Here, people say, if you go to canvas, paisa pehle rakho, baad mein karenge. Which country? So you need people to watch that. Okay? So all this takes money, time, effort, people. I'll just quote one instance. I mean, it's a shame, but I need to tell that in this gathering. In the RK Nagar by-election, normally there are only 5 expenditure observers to look at the expenditure of various candidates, right? There were 250 in RK Nagar by-election. Still money was given because RK Nagar money was given in Sholinganallur. Can anybody reach that? So if you don't have all that, one day election across the country is possible. So first let us reform ourselves and then saying that we're all now reformed, now conduct one day election. It can be done.
Namaste, sir. My name is Suresh Malya. My question to Mr. Krishnamurthy is, the retirement age of Supreme Court judge is 65. But why there is no upper age limit restriction for the politicians? Number one. Number two, like US, why can't we have a simple 2-term irrespective of party or a political leader? He cannot hold office for more than 2 terms. It will bring in a lot of new faces, new ideas. It will be prospering for our country. Your views, please.
No, I entirely agree that there is a scope for having a retirement, but will they agree? The political parties will not agree.
No, you should pass an amendment. You should pass the legislation.
Let me continue. It has to be only done by law. Will a law be passed to that effect? The political parties will not agree to that at all. Even, when I was in the Department of Company Affairs, we wanted to bring an age limit to the directors. And one of the suggestions made at that time was 65. How many people rose in protest against that? In fact, if I can let out a cabinet meeting secret, the whole company law was being discussed. This is the only issue that was discussed, whether there should be an age limit of 65 or not. So unfortunately in this country, we do not realize that beyond a particular age, we should only play an advisory role and not executive role. But there is no limit. If the parties would agree, they can certainly pass a law requires having an age limit of 65, 70, whatever you want. The second point you mentioned was? 2 terms. I entirely agree. It is possible. It is desirable. But political parties and politicians have to agree to this. That is the problem. It has to be in the form of a parliamentary act. Will they agree? Will they pass a law? There are many reforms that can be brought by just amending the Representation of People's Act with a simple majority. No party has shown any interest in electoral reforms. You look at any election manifesto from 1952. No party has ever mentioned about electoral reforms. So that is the way state of affairs in this country. So if you have any suggestions to improve, it has to come only through the Supreme Court. All the suggestions that we have been making from the Election Commission came only with the approval of the Supreme Court, but not through a legislative change. In fact, if there is a legislative change, I am sorry to say it has been a manipulative change. So politicians do not realize or do not look at with a long-term framework or long-term desirability. They don't look at it at all. So that is why I still keep on mentioning the weakest link in Indian democracy is the political parties.
I'll pass a tongue-in-cheek comment, Our politicians are all, they believe that like wine which is more mature, is sought after more. So like that, the more aged a politician is, he is sought after more by the people possibly.
Yeah, power is more intoxicating that way. And also, I think, if you put a retirement age to politicians, what will the retired judges and bureaucrats do? And the 2-term thing is politically incorrect in 2024. Maybe 2029 you can talk about it.
Thank you for this wonderful conference that you've arranged. It's been very enlightening. And any problem has multiple, any problem for a solution, to find a solution, we need to have a multi-pronged approach. The conceptual part, the implementation aspect, and all of that. I would like to, as a member of the public, talk about this from the space of how each one of us here can be a part of the solution, taking self-responsibility as citizens. And one of the points here, like when you talk about delimitation, it is very beautifully brought out saying, what is the role of an MLA? What is the role of an MP? That was being very beautifully brought out. I think the fundamental seed for that kind of misconception lies in the history class in schools. I remember as a student, civics section, which talks about all of these, has only 10 or 15 marks in the whole history paper. And the teachers used to say, some of the teachers, instead of teaching civics to children, they used to say, strike this out, it's just 10 marks. Or just read this portion, this is an important question. But my father told me, whatever the teacher says, civics is what teaches us about the government and everything, and our responsibility as a citizen. Doesn't matter if it has marks or not in the paper, you learn it. And my mother used to teach me referring books and all of that. And that has definitely, what I'm trying to say here is, as parents, schools may take a while to come to a point where we can, because laws, syllabus, so many things are involved. But each one of us as students or parents or grandparents, if each one of us in our own homes, if we can give importance to understanding civics and these various aspects which impact us as powerful citizens with a voice, then it will be really lovely. So I'm suggesting this as self-responsibility on each one of us, how we can make a difference. That is one point as self-responsibility. And the second point, which I would like to suggest as self-responsibility is, it's commonly said that all of us deserve the government that we have. I think it all starts, if we're saying the government is, like not doing a good job or whatever we have, I think that all of us have the same kind of thought process in our own mind. For instance, traffic violation, we say, oh, the cop's not looking, let me violate the red lights. So fundamentally, it's the same. The issue might be different, but the same thought process of if somebody is not watching, it's okay to do what is not right. So if we can take self-responsibility for our own character building and for our own education, I think we can all contribute to a better society. Thank you. That's what I wanted to suggest as being part of the solution.
Good afternoon. I'm Swati. I'm an independent journalist. I would like to concur with Mr. Alok Prasanna on anti-defection law. But my question to any of the panelists is, we are all watching a lot of poaching happening, and people are moving part to horse trading. And we are also watching people like MLAs being taken to resorts, reveling and merrymaking, and all the money, taxpayers' money is being spent. And I would like to know what role can the election commission play in curbing this trend. And secondly, I also want to, any one of the panelists to address the issue of, is so much money necessary to be spent in elections, especially given the electoral bonds and the crores and crores of rupee that is being sourced to fight election. And like what one of the panelists said, I think instead of going around traveling, I think YouTube is the best way where you can reach people, and that is cost effective. Thank you.
Let me very quickly address the first question. One of the problems with the anti-defection law is that they gave the speaker the power to disqualify. Unfortunately, that has corrupted the office of the speaker. One of the more neutral, impartial bodies which make our legislatures, the fundamental design flaw in the anti-defection law put all the onus on speakers. So you created an incentive for political parties to appoint the most biased, most partial, most compliant speaker who will simply, if you want them to disqualify, they'll disqualify people. If you don't want them to disqualify, they will not do anything. I am very hesitant about giving that function to the election commission, because I can say without doubt, not just because we have 2 election commissioners here, it has by far been the most impartial, the most credible, and because they have chosen correctly. All of the occupants of that office, you may disagree, agree on 1 or 2 here and there, they have carried out their functions without fear and favor. The moment you give too much power, the political parties will be, let's appoint the most partial, the most incompetent, the most biased person here, because we have given them the power to grab the government from us. Right? So which is why I sort of always tell the people, don't put too much importance on the appointment process. It has worked well enough. You can tweak it a little bit, but don't change it. So I would absolutely not give that function to the election commission, because it will create a perverse incentive to capture that body. So which is where I think we need to retweak it, but not in this way.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Aparna, and I have a question with respect to the actual practical procedures involved in voting. So a lot of my fellow voters are currently either employed or students in different states, or some of them are even abroad. Is there any procedure established currently, or is there any talks of it where, if, for example, I'm studying in another country, or if I'm currently studying in, for example, Bangalore or in any other place, can I, other than coming back here physically, is there any other way in which I can cast my vote?
See, for people outside the country, so far nothing has been done. Very difficult, because you need to do electronic transfer of vote, etc., etc. Security should be pakka. All this will take time. Maybe they are attempting it. But on your first question, if you are studying, if you belong to Chennai, but you are, for 5 years you are working, you are studying in, you have an option to register yourself there. So you can register yourself there and vote there. Okay. In an MP election, it should not matter, possibly. In any case, the facility is available, but if you insist saying that I belong to Chennai, I will only come and vote here, you have to travel. Of course, government can help you by having more Vande Bharats.
Sholing Nallur has been mentioned far too many times in the conversation today, so it would be unfair if I didn't interject here. I represent FOMRA, which is the Federation of OMR Resident Associations. We are a body of 175 resident welfare associations who have come together to solve the problems of OMR. So we are having a meeting, like we always do before all elections. We ask the candidates, at least the top 5 candidates, to come over to a meeting and tell us what they will do for the area before we vote for them. So this is basically so that we all make informed choices. Now, Mr. Gopalsamy has told us what an MP can't do, right? He can't be cleaning your gutters. But what can MP do? What can we ask them to do? And what can we expect them to do?
There is a lot the MP does, okay? I'll just take this thing. See, you will find that because of the fact that we expect the MP to do things which he is not expected to do, somebody else is expected to do, he is forced to do that. Therefore, many of them don't remain present when important policy discussions take place. You will find the Lok Sabha, practically empty. So when I discussed with some MP, he gave me a very good answer. He said, imagine, Mr. Gopalswamy, I am a foreign minister. At the end of 5 years, I go to my constituency. They ask me saying that, what have you done in 5 years? So he says, I have made our country sign an agreement with Iran. For the next 100 years, you will get oil at the today's price. So our energy requirements have been taken care of. I have made an agreement with some other country where they will give technology every time they develop something new, they will give it to us. Okay. People will look up to me and say, go and stay in that country. Why are you MP from here? Go and stay there. See, this is the reason why, because all of us do not correctly address the issue, the MP is forced to look into things which, after all, he has got also 24 hours time. So he will be looking into a gutter, but he will not be taking part in your policy discussion whether NEP is good or bad, whether IKS is good or bad, etc. It's all right, somebody else will do it. So there is a lot which they can do. See, the policy discussions which take place in the parliament. So he will have to find time to be able to do that, and that's what you should expect him to do. At the end of it, when he comes to you, you say that, what have you done in a foreign policy? What have you done? What is your contribution there? What's your contribution to the education policy? Etc. Ask those questions. Thank you.
I thought I'll just add.
Yeah, good afternoon.
A quotation from Edmund Burke. We addressed the voters of Bristol when he said, when you are electing a person from your constituency, please remember that the elected person should represent the constituency's interest first. But if there is a conflict between national interest and the constituency interest, concerned representative should vote for the national interest. So that is the point. The MP will certainly, of course, represent the people who will be electing him from a particular constituency. But he has to have both the constituency interest as well as the national interest.
Okay, we have time for just 2 more questions. The gentleman there in the white shirt, and then we come to the first table. You have been raising your hand for quite some time. Yes.
Good afternoon, Panelist. Good afternoon, moderator. My question is to Mr. Araprasan, sir, that you mentioned about the relationship for political parties and the promises they make. As Krishnamurti has said, if the politicians won't even accept for an retirement age, is there any scope and hope for the legislation such as the relationship for political parties and the promises they make? Because if there is any, I would be ready to put my bread and sweat into working on that.
This is a suggestion which has been made, but this is a larger constitutional issue. I assume you're a law student of some sort, or yeah. It's a problem with our constitution. You don't have to stand for me, please. Our democracy is built around the fact of political parties, but our constitution basically does not acknowledge that they exist. It was only when the 10th schedule was brought in, when the anti-defection law was brought in, did the constitution itself acknowledge, yes, political parties exist. There are other countries in the world which do recognize political parties within the constitution and the role that they play, how they should be regulated, who will be in charge of it. Our constitution, unfortunately, does not. And if you are interested, you should read the work of Mr. Aradhya Setia. He explains the problem very well. To me, it's not just enough to pass the law and the regulations. We have to think one level higher. And that one level higher will mean it's not just dependent on the party in power. It'll be dependent on this consensus building among political parties saying, yes, this is not sustainable. Our government system, our constitution cannot run without having some form of regulation for political parties. Once we start from that level, the law and regulation will follow. But this, to me, is the real gap. And thank you for pointing out that particular question.
I'm Ananta Kumar Giri from the Madras Institute of Economics. Out of many issues, it seems that the House has taken for granted the integrity of the machine, EVM. But what is the integrity of the Election Commission? Now, Mr. Prasanna, you seem to have taken for granted the fairness in the process of Election Commission, but that needs a far more deeper scrutiny, including what has happened recently. Secondly, in terms of the credibility of the electoral process, if our election is to further democracy, what other fundamental reforms are required? For example, look at the condition here. A party getting 25% of the vote rules over the entire country. Therefore, should we seriously think about the issue of proportional representation? My third quick query is that there is an entrenched problem of executive tyranny. Even the judiciary is subjected to executive tyranny. It is in this context, should we follow this practice that before the election takes place, an executive government should give the executive power to a judicial or a credible authority, as it happening in Bangladesh or Pakistan? Thank you.
I'll try and answer very quickly. Number one, I believe, and I'm not making the claim, like I said, about the Election Commission's impartiality out there. I'm making it on the basis of the fact that our constitution framers understood that you cannot have an all-powerful election commission. They gave them just enough power to be able to conduct elections and take important calls. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people think the election commission is this vast bureaucracy of millions of people working only for the election commission. That's not true. The election commission also depends quite a bit on the local bureaucracy, and the local bureaucracy is different in different states. Because the local bureaucracy might be partial, impartial, it does not reflect on the election commission at the highest level. The other reason why I sort of talk about the election commission's impartiality is that the peaceful transfer of power. India alone of its neighbors has not had any major political party say, we refuse to accept the results of this election, we will hit the streets. They've been happy, unhappy, they have blamed EVMs, they have blamed voters, they have blamed 1,000 things. No political party in the history of this country has said, these election results are false, we refuse to accept it. And I'm 100% sure whatever the result in June of 2024, no political party will say we will refuse to accept it. To me, more than whatever I say, that is the true certificate of the Election Commission's independence and impartiality. The third question, which you sort of, I'll come very quickly to, it's a fallout from the first. Because these countries have put in this system because they don't trust each other to be honest and fair when the elections are announced. If we have a system where irrespective of the political party, you believe that the administration is capable of being run honestly, that the election commission will take care of any problematic issues, like we see the election commission transferring high officials out when they feel that they will hamper the elections, election commission taking action against certain people. To me, as long as we have a very impartial election commission, we will not need that system of some other agency temporarily running the government. It may make sense in Bangladesh, it may make sense in Pakistan, but it's a reflection of a certain understanding of the political thing. Sorry, your second question I've just completely forgotten. Proportional representation. I think we make a mistake when it's a little bit like looking at a cricket score and say, if this fellow had scored 20 runs more, would have won the match. And I honestly we don't know what will happen, because there is a very famous theorem called the Arrow's impossibility theorem, which kind of says that any system of election that you choose, you will never be able to keep everyone happy, right? And it's a conscious choice that was made not just in 1950, but even before, right? When the British first introduced elections in this country, it was going to be first past the post system. In fact, India follows both systems. For our Lok Sabha elections and assembly elections, we follow the first past the post system. But for our presidential elections, we follow the proportionate system. I honestly don't see how the results might magically change if we flip the two systems around. I fundamentally believe people are used to a certain way of voting. We don't want to confuse them. And even as Sir was mentioning, in some municipal elections, there is multiple choice ranked voting. So people know what level works for them. There is no theory which says that just because you use proportional representation system, you will get a result which is acceptable to more people. In fact, the theory says the opposite of this.
Well, I may have slight difference of opinion with our friend Mr. Prasanna. The first past post system, which has been in existence not only in our country, in many Commonwealth countries, in my opinion, has outlived its futility. Some change is required. Now, of course, there are various alternatives available. The present system, what happens is that if 100% votes, a person with 25% votes represents the remaining 75% voters. Is that really representative democracy? I think we must ask this question. So we must examine. I'm not saying that all is good, but one of the suggestions which I have often found it to be interesting is insist on a minimum percentage of votes for a winner. Maybe 33 and 1/3 or 50% plus one vote, whatever. The country should choose the system. But a person, suppose in a constituency of 100 voters, there are 10 contestants and each one of them gets 10 votes, let us assume. The person who has got one vote more than the remaining people represents the remaining 90%. Is that the representative democracy we want? I'll allow you to ponder over it.
Sir, last question, one question please. We have really overshot the time. It's a wonderful topic. For me, it has been a great learning experience. I must thank the wonderful panel for this great learning experience, and I am sure that all of us would have had a similar deep learning experience discussing about so many issues, contemplating about so many issues. So I thank each panelist from the bottom of my heart. I must thank the audience. You have been very wonderful, patient. You have gone through the whole process. A lot of learnings have come from the Q&A session. So I thank the audience very much for their participation. So with that, we will bring this session to a close.